So we're going to continue talking about the history of the Sikh community. And because it's so modern, it began in the 1500s, so compared to other religions that began in India, it's quite recent. And because of that, we can really study it historically. When we look at Buddhism and Jainism, which began about 2,500 years ago, it's sometimes a little difficult to separate legend and myth from history. And not to speak of the Vedic tradition, which goes far beyond the historiographical horizon. And of course, even the Bhakti movements were earlier, but the Sikh Dharma beginning about, less than 500 years ago. Less than 500 years ago. It's quite historical. And you see this very clear case of an original founder starting something and saying, like, this isn't going to be like other religions, just like Buddha, just like Mahavir, just like everybody. Like, this isn't going to be like other religions. This is just going to be pure spirituality, and we're not going to have a bunch of rituals, and we're not going to have a hierarchy. We're all brothers and sisters in the faith. And then, of course, the danger is that the message will actually be successful. And if it's successful and then they attract a lot of followers, it's like, what do you do with a whole bunch of people? You have to organize them, and you start to get exactly what you said you wouldn't have. Hierarchies, because if you have a whole bunch of people, it's one thing to have a small face-to-face community of brothers and sisters in the faith, and everybody honors everybody else, and, well, you go first. No, you go first. And that's all right. Well, you go first. And, no one ever can get out the door. So, but when you have thousands and thousands of people, from a sociological standpoint, it moves from one category to another category. And to use the old German sociological term, just because we are in a university environment, at one level, it's Gemeinschaft, that's the old term, which just means community. And all the sociology, or communitology, of a community where people know each other, and there's intimate relationships, and so, everybody can just sit around the campfire and be brotherly and sisterly. But then when you get to the point of Gesellschaft, and when you get an actual society, by definition, a society, people don't see each other face to face. It's much bigger. There's a lot of people. And you have to organize them. And another thing is, for those who hope the world can be made purely rational and reasonable and everybody can be a philosopher, well, good luck. Because when a religion starts to get pretty big, what you find in the real world is that no matter how much you say, we're not just going to do rituals, we're going to stress deep, inner, spiritual realizations and wisdom. No matter how much you say that, when you get a whole bunch of people, what you find is that large groups of people tend not to be so philosophical and intellectual and inward and meditative. They actually like rituals. And you can, of course, lock the doors to the ritual hall or something, but they like rituals. They like ceremonies. They like the color. There was all this disappointment after certain Vatican reforms that took away some of the rituals. And some people convert from Protestantism to Catholicism, saying that they like all the pomp and the ceremony and the ritual and everything. And so this idea of this small, tight-knit, egalitarian, very spiritual, not into rituals, wisdom community is very nice, as long as you're not very successful and you don't have a lot of people joining. And so, for example, and you find this in every tradition. This is just human life on planet Earth. So, here's an example. The third guru, there were 10 Sikh gurus. After that, the last one, Guru, what's his name, Gobind Singh, declared that no more human gurus. It's interesting. He closed the canon. He closed the canon saying that this is the Adi Granth Sahib, the Guru Granth Sahib, this is a sacred book. And since the time of Guru Nanak, they kept putting things into the book. And in fact, there's even, somewhere here I've actually got a list of what's in the book. It's an amazing list. And of course, here it is. So the Adi Granth is the primary scripture of the Sikhs. It contains the works of the first 5 and the 9 Sikh gurus. The first 5 Sikh gurus of the 10. And the guru program of human gurus only lasted 200 years. I mean, think of the Tirthankars, the Jinas of Jainism, where there were all these, ford builders, the people that built the crossings, the Tirthankaras, the Jinas, the Conquerors, and then Mahavir is the last and the only one who's purely historical. And after that, there's no more. It's like, okay, the Jinn program's over, and now it's just us, just the religion. And so they only had these human gurus for 200 years, and after that, the last one, Gobind Singh, said the book is going to be the guru, and the book is worshipped as the guru. This, of course, in a movement which began by saying, unlike other religions, we don't place too much importance on books. That's one of the great ironies. So anyway, what's in the book? So for the first 5 gurus just wrote poems, wrote prayers, their realizations, and just went into the book. Hey, because he's a guru, so put it in the book. So the first 5 gurus did that. Guru number 9 also was inspired and wrote things for the book. So it contains the works of the first 5, the 9 Sikh gurus, 4 bards, as in, like Shakespeare, the bard. Although Shakespeare did not contribute to this book, but 4 bards, Sada, Balband, Sundar, and Maradana. 11 bhatts with 2 T's, each with a dot under it, meaning it's a retroflex T. The bhattas, 11 of them eulogists associated with the Sikh court, because we start to get in the movement which will have no hierarchy. It's very egalitarian. We get a royal court and big thrones. Anyway, life on earth. So there are eulogists. There are people that praise the gurus, praise the leaders, and 11 of them praised so well that their stuff made the cut into the book. And what else is in there? 15 bhagats, devotees, sort of from the Sanskrit word bhagavats, like Bhagavan, Vaishnava term. 15 bhagats, devotees such as Kabir, Namdev, Ravidas, Shaikh Farid, and other medieval poets of Sant, Sufi, and Bhakti origin. So there are 15 poets that weren't even Sikhs. They never heard of Guru Nanak. They were just these people who were poets at the time, devotional. There was obviously a wave of devotionalism. Interestingly, at the same time, you have this wave of bhakti movements, including Sikhism, by the way. Same thing's going on in Europe. Because in Europe, they're having this Protestant Reformation. The Catholic monopoly has been broken. It's a brand new religion economy in the sense there's competition. Everyone has to compete for the hearts and minds and souls of the people of Europe. And there's this tremendous emphasis on bhakti, on devotion to God, like who's really devoted to God, who really loves God, who really is connected. So actually all around the world, really, I don't know about China, but at least in Europe and in the Middle East, the Muslim world, and in India, there's this wave of devotion to God. It's a very interesting historical period. So there are 15 sort of inspired poets, including Kabir, who had the invaluable realization that God is not in any holy sanctuary. Anyway, so these 15 people, their work gets into the Sikh scripture, which is now like their Bible. And yet 15 of the people that wrote for it, of course, were not part of their tradition. Just happened to be poets that the Sikhs thought wrote pretty cool stuff. So that stuff went in too. So what else is in there? Well, that's about it. Standard version contains 1,430 pages, etc. So that's what's in the Guru Granth Sahib, which became the Guru. It is the Guru now and is worshipped by Sikhs as their Guru after 200 years of 10 human gurus. Yes, back there, and then you. Yes?
I was wondering, I didn't read, or in the online video, it didn't really elaborate on it, but it was saying that Sikhs, I guess, were ahead of the times with equality for women. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Well, that's...
It didn't elaborate much in the video.
It was, yeah, they did stress this. That was, I think, one of the very positive aspects of their presentation. For one thing, I mean, I don't know if this is relevant, but I suspect it is. And that is, by the time Guru Nanak had his inspiration, his revelation, while bathing in a river, he had been a happily married man for 10 years. And those who are really happily married tend to kind of have mutual respect, because if you don't really respect your spouse, it's hard to truly be happily married. And he had 2 kids, and it was just kind of like Guru knows best. Father knows best. And so he himself was a happily married man and had 2 kids and a good wife. And so, yeah, so in that sense, I think he was sort of a healthy, emotionally healthy human being. Yes?
Can you see if you could just write the name of their sister book?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, it's the word grunt, not to be confused with the English. So grunt is actually from a Sanskrit root grunt, which means to bind or to tie. And so because books were literally tied with string or yarn or something, therefore literally sort of like a bound object was called a grunt, a book. And so that's just the Indian word for book, one of the Indian words. And Adi means original or first, and so the Adi grunt means like the original book or the first book. And then they added Sahib, which sort of means like master, and sometimes it's called the Guru Granth Sahib and so on. So the Sikh Dharma is a fascinating case study of something which we saw in Buddhism also, the same thing. Starting out very Spartan, very simple, an inspired founder who personally lives a simple spiritual life and says, let's just be spiritual, not get too ritualistic and institutional, and then exactly the opposite happens. So here's just one example, because if you're successful, you get a lot of people. What do you do with them? And so the only way to sort of, in a sense, stay true to the very simple, purely spiritual principles of your origin is don't be very successful. Probably catch-22, isn't it? Hence the need for periodic religious reform. Anyway, here's a quote about Guru Amar Das, the third guru. He inaugurated a literal tirat, which means pilgrimage, tirat, essentially. He inaugurated a pilgrimage. His decision to specify times and places for Sikhs to gather comes as a surprise after Guru Nanak's dismissal of rites and pilgrimages in favor of inner spirituality. But it is just such a process of institutionalization, that turns spiritual initiatives into religions and set them apart from other religions. And there was a growing concern on the part of Sikhism to differentiate themselves. I mean, if you go back to the earliest days when Guru Nanak tells the gathering that, those of you who are Hindus, you can stay Hindus. Those of you who are Muslims, you can stay Muslims. And then you get one of the gurus later saying, we are not Hindus or Muslims, we're our own religion. And they get more and more and more into their Sikh identity, their Punjabi identity, so that, as I said, field research today in England, where you have concentrated Sikh communities in certain towns and neighborhoods, shows that young Sikhs in England basically interchange their identity as a Sikh or as a Punjabi. It's kind of like the same thing. And we can actually trace that. There's if you look at the successors of Guru Nanak, for example, the first successor, and there were, one thing I just want to mention, there are always succession battles. There's a pattern in early Sikh history where a relative, a son or a brother, wants to be the guru. During the 200 years approximately when they had 10 gurus, and then, doesn't get chosen and kind of says, I'm going to do it anyway, and you get a schism. That's another thing you just can't avoid. I mean, good luck. If you think you can start a new religion and you're not going to have schisms, the only way not to have schisms is just to stay very small. So schisms based on hereditary claims, like I'm in the family. So Guru Nanak's son claimed that I'm the next guru. That was my dad. And of course, you'd find a very similar thing in Islam. That's what split Islam between the Sunnis and the Shiites. The Sunnis, the Shiites saying that we should follow the hereditary, the genetic line of Muhammad through his, what was his cousin or nephew, Ali? What's that? Son-in-law. Son-in-law, Ali. And then you get the Shiite tradition that claims there is a hereditary succession from the prophet, and the Sunnis saying, no, it's not about genetics, it's about the religious thing. And claiming that the ummah, that the community is really what matters. It's the community. So anyway, so the son of Guru Nanak started his own group and said, we're the real Sikhs. And they were called the Udasis, which it looks like, I'm pretty sure, it's from the Sanskrit word, ud means up or above, and asi is sitting. There's a term in the Gita, udasina, to sit above things. In other words, they were renunciates. There were other groups at the time, similar to the Shramanas actually. They were kind of like medieval Shramanas that wanted to give up the world and go out and meditate. And Guru Nanak's own son said, yeah, that's the way to go. Apparently Guru Nanak himself, happy married guy, father, husband, and stressed the dignity of work, something like the Protestant ethic, and honest labor, agriculture, and so on, self-sufficient villages. And his son wanted to renounce everything and claimed that's the real way. Of course, he ran up the flagpole, but most Sikhs didn't salute it. Yes?
If the Guru appoints a successor, did that happen in this group?
Yeah, but there's always the argument, well, that's not what he really meant, and that's not what he really said, and etc. That's standard. So, so much I want to cover. My God, beat the clock. So, the second guru, Anga means limb. So it's like he was so intimate with Guru Nanak, he was like a limb of his own body. So he's called Guru Angad. He changed the script because in those days, sort of classical Indian religions were on the Vedic side, I guess not even on the Buddhist side and everywhere, Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the quintessential appropriate language for writing serious spiritual things. And of course, on the Muslim side, Persian. And they have the Persian language, the sophisticated Persian language. And so Guru Angad said, hey, we're not going to do our thing in Sanskrit or Persian. We're going to have our own Punjabi script. So you see, there's this very strong regional feeling from the beginning. So they have their Gurumukhi script. Gurumukhi literally means that faces the Guru. In fact, here's even a statement, language became the single most important factor in the preservation of Sikh culture and identity because they have their own Punjabi language. It's their language. You see, it very early on it starts to get very Punjabi. And I don't mean to say that's bad, but that's just what happened. Then during the third guru, Amar, another major institutional development, series of innovations to provide greater cohesion and unity to the ever-growing Sikh Panth, Sikh path. The establishment of a city. So you start to get a Sikh city. This is not Guru Nanak sitting down in a little village or on a river bank and just, speaking to the faithful. We have cities now. Biannual festivals of Diwali and Vaishakhi, which are Hindu festivals. The missionary movement. And then the fourth Guru Ramdas founded a city called Ramdas City, Ramdaspur. So he apparently thought that he was making a serious contribution because his name was Ramdas, which interestingly is a Hindu name. Ramdas means servant of Ram, the hero of the Ramayana. So again, what you find is that as time goes on, they differentiate themselves more and more from Hinduism. But if you look at the earliest days, their names like the last guru's Govind Singh. Govind is the name of Krishna. And here's the third guru, Ramdas, which means servant of Ram, the avatar of Vishnu. And so on. And Guru Nanak, of course, is born in a normal Hindu family. But he was trying to bridge the gap between different religions. But there's clearly now they start celebrating Hindu festivals. Although they probably did it in their own regional way. And then Ramdas founds the city of Ramdaspur, Ramdas City. Anyone who's interested in historical linguistics, just very quickly, Sanskrit, Pura, city, Greek, polis. R's and L's kind of go back and forth, and you look at different languages. Anyway, city. So Ramdaspur constructed a large pool. Now what's interesting is in the city was named Amritsar, which means the immortal lake or something. There's a big lake in that city. What's interesting is the temple, which is now called the Golden Temple, the original name for this temple, which was like, I suppose kind of like the Vatican of Sikhism back then. It was like St. Peter's Cathedral. The name of this temple was the Hari Mandir, which literally means the Krishna temple. Because Hari is a very well-known name of Krishna. And that was the name of the temple. So clearly there's some kind of connection with Hinduism, but at the same time there's a strong regional feeling, and they're going to differentiate themselves more and more as time goes on. As I mentioned last time, they stressed chanting the name. Same thing that Chaitanya, founder of the Hare Krishna movement, stressed. Here's a quote. Guru Ramdas was asked, "Who is a Sikh?" And he answered, "He who calls himself Sikh, a follower of the true Guru, should meditate on the divine name, the name of God, after rising and bathing, and recite Japji." Japa, that means like chanting. You may see like Hare Krishna devotees chanting. They have their little bead bags and they have beads. You may have seen that. Anyway, if you find one, just sort of grab his beads and look at them. So that's what japa is. Japa is sort of like, kirtan is when everyone sings together with musical instruments, sometimes sitting, sometimes standing, and japa is your own private chanting, meditation on the names of God. So, after rising, recite Japji from memory, driving away all evil. As the day unfolds, he sings Guru Bani, utterance of the Gurus. Sitting or rising, he meditates on the divine name. He who repeats the divine name with every breath and bite, by the way, is indeed a true Sikh who gives pleasure to the Guru. I mean, think of the old Bible thing that, you shall remember God when you rise up and you sit down, when you leave your home and so on. Yes?
What is the divine name?
That's a very good question. Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll read something about that. It's not because of the tendency to... okay, here's a quote in that regard, which I prepared for this class. This is a quote from Guru Nanak. The nature of the ultimate reality in Sikh doctrine is succinctly expressed in the Mool Mantar. Mool Mantar. This is like sort of like the great... in Punjabi, Mool is just Sanskrit for Mula, which means root. That just means root. And Mantar is just a typical linguistic shift where you avoid a cluster of consonants. It's, well, they actually spell it like this. Mantar, from the Sanskrit mantra. There's a very common linguistic tendency to avoid consonant clusters like this, because it's easier to say mantra than mantra. So anyway, that's what that is. It's like the root mantra or the root prayer. And so here it is. It's a preamble to the Sikh scripture. The basic theological statement reads as follows. There is one supreme being, Oankar, which is like Omkar, the Om. The eternal reality, the creator, without fear and devoid of enmity, immortal, never incarnated, self-existent, known by grace through the Guru. The eternal one from the beginning through all time, present now, the everlasting reality. So, it's interesting because there's kind of this thing like, it doesn't incarnate, because obviously in the Hindu side, they're totally into these avatars of Ram and Krishna and so on. And yet they're still using these names. They call themselves with names of Krishna, names of Ram, Ram Das, Gobind Singh, which are just names of these avatars. So there does seem to be some ambivalence there. But so as far as the name, it's more like epithets, like the eternal one, the everlasting one, and so on, as opposed to a more personal avatar name. Yes?
Their God is both personal and universal.
Yeah, Nirguna, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Well, your last look at this fascinating comparative linguistic note. All right. So, you may remember that in the Vedanta debates, in these great Upanishadic Vedanta debates, they talked about guna. Now, the word guna, quality, guna means quality, can refer to the three material qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, which we've talked about. Or it can mean more generally any quality, like, for example, the fact that God is powerful. That's a guna, that God is powerful, or that God is loving, or God is compassionate. Any quality, any personal attribute, in a sense, is a guna. So in the great Vedanta debates, there were people that said that God is near guna. This is the same negative near that you find in the word nirvana. Nirvana means no vana, and nirguna means no guna. So God has no personal qualities. And other people said, hey, wait a second, of course God has qualities. God is merciful and beautiful and all that. So that's saguna. So this was the great debate. Now, the Sikhs said that God is both nirguna and saguna, thereby clarifying matters. Interestingly, the Vaishnavas also say that. The Vaishnavas, the ones who worship Krishna or Rama and so on, say that because they say that there is a nirguna form of God. However, that's just the effulgence of God. It's like saying that the sunshine has no particular shape. If you think of sunshine, it's simply diffused everywhere, whereas the sun globe has a shape. It's a globe. So you have an object with a shape, with a specific shape, putting out energy that's simply formlessly diffused. And that's the example that's given. Plato actually really likes this example of God as the sun. So that's the idea that God is like the sun. God has a form. God has a personal form. But God's spiritual energy emanates from God, and that is the nirguna. It is, so the nirguna absolute, the nirguna Brahma, is not the ultimate form of God. It's just the diffusion of God's glory, of the spiritual energy. But the source of that spiritual energy is a personal loving God. That's the Vaishnava take on this thing. Of course, the followers of Shankara, they have another take. They would say that the saguna God, God with qualities, is just, like when Maya hits your eye like a big pizza pie, or that one that when the soul becomes covered by illusion, the soul imagines that he or she or it is seeing a personal God. And that's okay. It's okay for now. Just go with it because it'll make you religious and pious and help you to give up smoking cheap cigarettes. However, when you become enlightened, when you actually become enlightened, then you will see that actually God is nirguna. It's just this big corporate radiance that you can merge into, giving up your undesirable freedom and personal existence, individuality, and all those other things that no one really wants anyway. So, one thing about the Sikh tradition is that, how should I put it? I would not say it is the most philosophical. It's not a tradition which tended to emphasize sophisticated philosophy. And so they a lot of things, almost everything they say you can find here and there in the Vedic traditions and the Sufi traditions, here and there. So they didn't tend to get very philosophical, technical about it. Just kind of like, here's some really great wisdom, and come and join us. And it ended up being mostly, almost. There is a Sikh movement in the West, started by a gentleman named Yogi Bhajan. And it's called Sikh Dharma. They do Kundalini yoga things, and actually they just lived about a mile or two from me in Southern California, where I happen to live, and so saw them around. They tend to be Western, and they wear large turbans and so on. Yes?
Do they have a tea that they make?
They do have a tea, and they actually make, I think, organic breakfast cereal and other products. So you see they have natural. Anyway, but apart from that group, which has some following in America, it's not too large, it's almost all Punjabi. And so again, it started out as a bridge, as a universal tradition for everyone, getting away from sectarian religion, ended up to be one of the traditions most tightly identified with a specific ethnic group. So before the time runs out, I do want to go over some of the more dramatic points. Little history here, wake everybody up. Now that theology has put you to sleep, try to wake you up with blood and violence. So what happened? You had these 10 gurus. And the fifth one, Guru Arjan, was tortured and killed by the Mughals. It started out with a very happy relationship. Guru Nanak himself celebrates the invasion of Delhi, or the invasion of India by the Mughals, throwing out the old Islamic regime, and he thinks this is good, this is progressive. And then Humayun, the son of Babar, the Mughal conqueror, has a good relationship with the Sikhs because, after all, their founder supports their invasion and their takeover. So everybody's happy. Then the son of Humayun, of course, is the great Akbar. And Akbar is, world religions major and really into comparative things. And so he thinks, yeah, this is great. This is a nice new religion we have up in the Punjab. And so he goes up there and even takes part in their langar, their community meal. By the way, this was a very, I think, significant thing. I'll just mention very quickly. That in a civilization which tends to be very hierarchical and very caste conscious and sub-caste conscious and everything, insisting that everyone sit down together, whether you're a high-class person or low-class, rich or poor, whoever you are, everybody sits down together and eats together. I think is a really good idea, personally. I mean, you find the same thing at Yale University, by the way. Going back hundreds of years ago, where one of the features, cultural features of Yale was that everyone, all the students, had to belong to these dinner clubs where you sit down with your cohort. In New England, they say cohort a lot instead of group, which I found at Harvard. Anyway, so you sit down with your cohort and you share a meal. Plato in the Republic of the Laws, one of those books, one of his utopian books, says that that there's a tendency for people to sort of retreat into their own families, like becomes tribal, like, we're the Jones family, you're the Smith family, and we have our dinner and you have your dinner. And Plato wants a city where everyone's united, where the city is really a community. I mean, the Athenians really thought in terms of cities. They didn't think of nations or states or anything. It's always cities. So therefore, men should leave their families and go eat together. Everybody should eat together. Plato says that the city will never really develop as a community if everyone takes private meals. People should go and sit down and eat together. And that's what the Sikhs did. And so Akbar went and sat down one of these meals. He's got in line and got his, I guess, Sikh version of Christian lunch. And so, and he said, so with Akbar, everything's very nice. It's the Mughals and the Sikhs have this great, to use it's symbiotic. It's kind of a funny word because it's overused. Anyway, so then Akbar passes away. 8 months after Akbar dies, his son and successor, Jahangir, who has killed all his rivals in a following tradition. 8 months after Akbar dies, the Sikh guru is being tortured to death in Delhi. Tortured to death. 8 months after Akbar dies. Clearly, they needed some kind of relationship counseling here. So anyway, at that point, the Sikhs mobilized. They make, as I said last time, they make their decision. We're not just going to take this. We're going to fight fire with fire. We need to become militant. Now, by that time, one point is that there's a certain group of people called the Jats. They're sort of an ethnic group. They were in the Punjab. And they could be peasant or otherwise, and they tend to be very militant. They were kind of like this fierce fighting, and a lot of them joined the Sikh movement. So if you look at the influence, if you look at the incredible shift in the Jesus movement, when the demographics totally changed from being a movement of Jews thinking they were joining a sort of like the best Jewish movement around, which that's what it was if you read the book of Matthew at the time of Jesus, and then after a generation or two, suddenly almost everyone in the Jesus movement is a former pagan. And they're bringing a whole different set of assumptions and beliefs. And Jesus gets radically reinterpreted with this demographic shift. That's another topic. But in any case, with these Jats, they're kind of very warlike. And so things start to become very militant. In fact, one of the gurus, he starts wearing swords. Like, you have to wear swords. And then that becomes a rule. Everyone's got to wear a dagger. They become very militant, political, and basically, within 100 years or two, they rule the Punjab. They actually become a political military movement. I don't mean to say they weren't sincere about their spiritual beliefs, but that's how they interpret their religious mission. In order to be a good Sikh, we need to take over, specifically the Punjab. So here are some facts very quickly, before the time runs out. There's a gentleman named Ranjit Singh, who's very important in Sikh history. Rana in Sanskrit means battle, so Ranjit just means one who conquers in battle. Ranjit and Singh, by the way, this last name that almost all the Sikhs have, is from the Sanskrit Singha, which means lion. So everybody has an S, Mr. Lion, Mrs. Lion, because it's like this very fierce community. And so Singapore, by the way, is Sanskrit. Singapore, remember the word poor? It's just the Lion City. If you ever wondered what Singapore is. So, anyway, Ranjit Singh. Now, before him, actually, Banda Singh, but after the last guru, guru number 10, Gobind Singh, he says, no more gurus. The canon is closed. He closes the Adi Granth Sahib. The book is closed. No more new poems. No more new inspirations. So he closes the canon. And he says no more gurus. So he really seals everything off. After that time, the book is the guru, and so he appoints a successor, not as guru, but just someone to govern, a Banda Singh Bahadur, who led a successful campaign against the Mughals until he was captured and executed in 1760. So it's war at this point. I mean, the Sikhs by this time, they're just this religious, political, military group. So in the middle of the 1700s, the Sikhs rose up again, and over the next 50 years, they took over more and more territory. If you remember the history, we'll go over this later. We're going to talk in detail about the European entrance into India. So Aurangzeb, the wicked Aurangzeb, is gone at the end of the 1600s. He basically crippled the Mughal Empire by his overreaching and just fighting everyone. And so in the 1700s, the Mughals are declining. As the Mughals decline, the Sikhs are rising. They're getting more and more converts. They're becoming stronger. The Mughals are getting weaker. So in 1799, and we're kind of jumping ahead here, by 1799, Ranjit Singh captured Lahore, very important town in Pakistan, and in 1801 established the Punjab as an independent state with himself as Maharaj. So by 1801, the Sikhs basically rule the Punjab. They withdraw it from the Mughal Empire. And of course, the English, by the way, are quite active, and so there's going to be a problem with the English. It's not just the Mughals anymore. But anyway, by 1801, Punjab is an independent country. They just take it out of the Mughal Empire. And Ranjit Singh, who's the Sikh leader, is the king of Punjab. Now, the Sikhs are still a minority at this point, but they're a very organized, inspired minority, and apparently he was a good ruler. Ranjit Singh was not only a great leader in battle, he also lived a long time, so he died in 1839. When he died, the Sikh state crumbled, damaged by vicious internal battles for leadership. This is the banks of the river, just everyone saying the name of God. But now we have vicious internal struggles for political leadership. The state crumbles. And one thing I should mention, one of the reasons the Mughals and the Sikhs were always having trouble is because as the Sikhs were growing, they tended to interpret their mandate as being also social and political. And the Mughals, they didn't like people getting too strong. They wanted to put them down. So there's all these battles going on. Now the British by this time the British are really in charge of India as we get into the 1800s, and they see the Sikhs as just another country they've got to deal with and subordinate. In 1845 and 46, the British Empire defeated the Sikh armies and took over much Sikh territory. So in 1845, a few decades before the American Civil War, there's actually a war between the Sikhs and the English, and the English win. And Punjab is, for the most part, incorporated into, the East India Trading Company, to be technical. Then, the Sikhs rebelled again. We'll talk about that because for a long time India was actually ruled by a private corporation. So I'm sure it must have been very pleasing to Ayn Rand. Anyway, the Sikhs rebelled again in 1849 and were defeated by the British again, this time conclusively. So after this battle, the British thought, hey, let's make friends with the Sikhs, because they thought, because the British were trying to kind of deal with this huge thing they were taking over, and because the Sikhs had this strong thing like we're Sikhs, we're Punjabis, we're not just part of India, so the British thought we can use that to sort of play on that and get real cozy with the Sikhs, which they did. And they really played to the Sikh pride, like you guys are the real men in India, you know, because you guys are the real fighters, you're the real men. And so there was this great relationship between the Sikhs and the British until 1999, because there was a massacre in Amritsar. By 1919, Mohandas Gandhi is up and at 'em, and there's, independence is in the air. And so in the Punjab, in Amritsar, there is a peaceful demonstration for independence, and a gentleman named General E.H. Dyer opened fire on this peaceful demonstration. He just told his soldiers to shoot everybody. Very famous incident in English. See the Gandhi movie? It's a big thing in the Gandhi movie. Opened fire without warning on 10,000 people. The troops killed about 400 people, wounded 1,000. Dyer felt he had been obliged to teach a moral lesson in the Punjab. Anyway, some historians regard the Amritsar massacre as the event that began the decline of the British Raj by adding enormous strength to the movement for Indian independence. In October 1997, Queen Elizabeth II made the gesture of laying a wreath at the site of the massacre. Anyway, so 1947, India is partitioned, and between India and Pakistan, the Sikhs felt badly treated and reluctantly chose to join India. They were unable to demand their own state because there were too few of them to resist Pakistan's claims to the Punjab. So a piece of the Punjab is now in Pakistan, and there's a piece of the Punjab in India, and it's the Indian Punjab where most of the Sikhs live. So they had to side with India to keep at least part of the Punjab. Sikhs lost many of their privileges, much of their land, were deeply discontented, and oh yeah, here it is. So what happened? The Sikh ambition for a state of their own was something India would not concede. So there's this tension, because these are the Sikhs. These are the Sikhs who have been, kind of having their own thing off and on with the Mughals, with the British. Now it's an independent Indian state, but they just, since the beginning, they've had this relationship with whoever is the power. There's always someone else in charge in Delhi, right? It's the Mughals, or it's the British, or it's just the Indian government. And if you know the geography, Punjab is just north of Delhi. I mean, it's not right there, but it's pretty close. It's not far away. That's why the Mughals always were kind of concerned, because they're not very far away. They're just to the, well, this is Delhi right here. It's up here. It's just the northwest. And so from the beginning of, not the beginning, but by the time we get to, 8 months after the death of Akbar, until about 9 years ago, there's this constant battle between the Punjabi Sikhs and whoever happens to be ruling India, whether the Mughals, the British, or the Indian government. And this flared up. And so they wanted their own, Khalistan. They wanted their own state. They wanted their own country. They wanted to separate from India. And in June 1984, when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister, she sent Indian troops to Amritsar. It's called Operation Blue Star, for some reason known to her. Operation Blue Star, they attacked the Golden Temple, the Hari Mandir, the Krishna temple. They attacked the Hari Mandir, the most sacred, like the Vatican, like St. Peter's of Sikhism. They attacked this. The soldiers actually took over the temple, walked inside with their boots and everything. which if you know Indian culture is like unbelievable. The result, they killed her. They assassinated Indira Gandhi. She must have had a death wish because she had these Sikh bodyguards, personal bodyguards, literally bodyguards with state-of-the-art machine guns. And the Secret Service told her, Prime Minister Ji, get these guys out of here because the Sikhs are going nuts over what you did. And she insisted, no, I trust these people. And so, I don't know whether it was a death wish or something like that. In any case, she was one day in the Prime Minister's palace, and in fact there was, what is that guy's name, Peter Ustinov or something? Great actor of the 20th century. He was waiting to interview her for some kind of story for BBC or something. And her Sikh bodyguards just lowered their machine guns and, well, literally filled her full of lead. And so that was so again, this violence between whoever happens to be in charge of India in Delhi and the Sikhs, that was 1984. Indira Gandhi was assassinated. Yes? Why? Because there was a very strong movement for Sikh independence. They wanted to secede from the Union. They wanted to secede from the Indian Union. If you think of the American Civil War. And in India, because India traditionally wasn't one country, there were always different countries. It's like Europe. There's all kinds of places in India that wanted to have their own countries. And so they thought, we better not get into this. Like, don't even go there and start making new countries. Because what do you do with Tamil Nadu? And yes.
Do you know how they feel about the current Prime Minister?
Well, let's see. I have some information here for you. So after they killed Indira Gandhi, 4 days of anti-Sikh rioting followed in India. We have 1 minute. The government said more than 2,700 people, mostly Sikhs, were killed, while newspapers and human rights groups put the death toll between 10 and 17,000. Sikhs are still resentful that action has not been taken against all those who were responsible. For several years, militant Sikhs responded by killing members of the Hindu community and a number of Sikh political leaders who opposed them. And the anger and frustration dominated Sikh politics until the mid-1990s. The 300th anniversary of the Sikh Khalsa, their community, 1999, changed the Sikh community. It was covered positively and approvingly by the Indian and world press, which did much to restore Sikh confidence that they were appreciated for their true worth. So that's Sikh Dharma. In brief, we could have a class on Sikh Dharma, but that's a very brief coverage of it. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you Monday, hopefully.